alive, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello, 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 hello. It's a magnificent Monday. Today is June 21st, 2021. So 6/21/21. That's like interesting. I am Dr. Jefferson, and this is Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. So welcome in. For those of you who are viewing me for the very first time, if you guys are catching me on the replay, go ahead and type replay right now so I know that you guys came back and you started watching this video from the very beginning, and then therefore your contributions are from the very beginning of the video all the way to the end. For those of you who are catching me live, thank you so much for taking the time out of your midday today, to sit with me, whether you're in traffic leaving work or you are at home right now and you've already left, work for the day. I am in the process of growing my YouTube channel. And kind of transitioning from Facebook as a primary space for myself going live and things like that. So if you guys are not already subscribed on the YouTube platform, then go there now and do that. Also like and share the content as it resonates. I say as it resonates because I know that everybody isn't everybody's cup of tea, right? I think that's a huge thing to not only give validity to, but in the context of this particular discussion today, I think that that's something that's necessary. So as you guys know, for those of you who have been watching me for a while, I approach accountability in conversation. So I talk about the way the things that we do impact the way that we view the world that we live in. Primarily, I focus on a lot of issues that are going on in America and within the context of the Black community, simply because the Black community is one that we notice is definitely struggling to find balance and stability frequently. And it's really important for me to do the work and make sure that the community is balanced, at least on the realms of accountability, right? Awareness. Sometimes I feel like sometimes we just don't have the knowledge, and as a means, we don't move in that same light. So today I'm going to be talking about accountability in the Black community, kind of like as a roundabout discussion. I think I touched on this a little bit in the last live, but the way that I approach the issues in this live will be a little bit different. So I want to know from you guys, the question for the continuation of the discussion as you guys come in, it's going to be, what is preventing Black people from making strides today? So in the here and now, in the present, not living in the future, nor living in the past. What's preventing our culture, as you see it, from making strides? I had a very interesting comment left by a female on one of my previous videos on Umar Johnson. And she mentioned having been married to a guy who is or identifies with the Black community, and that her lack of support for Umar Johnson and her husband's position and take on Umar Johnson and his content has definitely caused some issues in their marriage. And appropriately so, right? So if I think that oftentimes people do marry without asking the very important questions that would, of course, ground a relationship. Understanding people's religious or spiritualistic views that are a part of their contribution, family of origin, or the way that they relate to their families, the people who raised them. That's really something that's important. And even more important, political views are huge in relationships because it can definitely cause a divide. Nobody wants to be divided because of an external factor. Okay. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is something that has been heavy in the Black community for at least the last 10 years. A lot of people have talked about the demise of the Black community. A lot of people talk about the rise and fall of the Black community over the course of years post-slavery. And a lot of people see the thing that ultimately caused the demise or the fall of the Black community as drugs, which is something really interesting. Because if we are to ask, just do a general survey, go out and ask people in the Black community where we find our majority, and that's going to be our young people, essentially, between the ages of 18, because we want to go from legal age. We're going to start asking, if we did a survey from people that were 18 all the way to 35, what we would find is that a large amount of those people use some level of illicit substance, and they do so on their own. Okay. And for them, they feel like this is something that helps them, stabilizes them, and things like that. Okay. If you ask people how they found their way to drugs, okay, because drugs, I have to admit, drugs is it's all around the world. We have planes and planes, ships, that can take people and things wherever. Excuse me. He says growth is the problem. You've given up on our people. Okay, and that's a perception. That's an interesting perspective, actually. Very interesting. So when you say giving up, what do you mean by that? Let me see. I'm gonna put this question back up here. So, as I mentioned before, because I know some of you came in a little bit late, what is preventing Black people from making strides today? In of course, in your perspective, what are some of the things that you contribute to the fall of the Black community, and when did that happen for you? So to get back to what I was saying about the fall being something that people go back and they attribute to drugs arriving in the Black community on some mysterious planes, and the feds did it. What that says is that the Black community has a lack of accountability. So if we were to say, right, and I want you guys to really hear me on this one. So you know what? I want you guys to go ahead and click that share button and share this content, because this is where the conversation gets serious. The Black community has a problem with accountability. At the end of the day, that's what it is. The Black community is one that operates out of the mindset that regardless of what is done, they are above the law. They are above regulatory authority of the United States, which they see as an external entity from themselves. So although they are very much United States citizens, right, American citizens, and they seek to benefit from being American citizens by way of taking advantage of the assistance that's there, the resources that are there, and all of these things, when it's beneficial for the Black community, we externalize America, and we're no longer American. Now we're Black. And we're unique in our Black experience, and no one can understand us because in our uniqueness, we are being suppressed because we're not allowed to break the laws. So if we looked at the origin of these drugs that we say have caused a significant amount of detriment to our community, right? If we look at cocaine or cocaina or heroin, if we look at these drugs have existed for ages prior to being delivered to the Black community. Okay. And these communities where this drug has existed, somehow these communities still manage to be respectful, protective, and provisional for their communities. Somehow these communities have learned ways to band together, not be divisive, and to find solutions for the issues within their community. Somehow these cultures have found a way out of no way to provide where there were no provisions for their children. So again, I ask you the question, who has led to the demise of the Black community? So Mr. Brown says, good afternoon, doclqj. I think that our culture has no clear vision or real goals. I think he means or real goals, like in the Civil Rights Day to unite and grow. Now it starts at home for leadership, real accountability. I agree. Essentially, when we talk about this, there is a letter that I want you guys to kind of reference. It's called Cato's Letter. And it's an article that was publicized, I think, in 2017. So I want you guys to go and hit the Google button, search it up, read the specifics of Cato's letter and the way that it's outlined, that although we talk about racism being a huge indication as to why Black people are marginalized people, right, in America, the reality is racism is not an issue for us. Our division is the division that we decide to seed, we decide to walk in, accept, and operate out of. As a result, we do not make strides. It talks about the lack of accountability around drugs, but also what our culture has turned into today. So when we talk about the fact that someone placed drugs in our community, one of the things that I have mentioned oftentimes in conversation and on other people's platform where I've spoken about this particular issue, right? I mentioned the accountability index. So I know that some of you won't resonate with this because some of you are fairly young and you won't remember. But back in the day, it was something. It meant something to be an Afro-American person, okay? And there was a certain level of accountability and responsibility as far as like the way you presented yourself outside of the home. There was a certain degree of pride that went along with that. Very similar to what we see in the African communities. But so as a result of that, people held themselves to a higher level of respectability and accountability. So what they did, right, outside of the home was a direct reflection of the home they came from, the family line that they came from. And as a result, those Afro-American men and women represented one another in the optimal ways, meaning they made it their business to be reflective of good standards, solid morals, solid values, right? People that were respectable. So Jermaine says, we fight against each other too much. We believe the white man more. We take their drugs and vaccine, even though we know they are trying to kill us. Okay. So when you say that, who is this white man? And who are the they? And how do you figure they are trying to kill us? It says, we accept their God, Jesus, turn the other cheek and obey our earthly slave masters, just as the Bible say. I guess that's a way to look at it, but I have to say, there are several cultures of people, of melanated communities, who are devout Christians, but still not enslaved to the conditions in which their communities are exposed to. So I think it's a mindset, valuation, legacy, history, understanding, education, insight, and elevation over situation. But so I could see how easy it is to buy into some level of a hidden agenda, right? But if we are truly going to optimize our opportunities, if we're truly going to be successful in our attempts to become greater people who operate from a place of independence and then interdependence when necessary, right? If we are those types of people, then we have to be committed to doing the work. And that work starts with a high degree of accountability. So I sat earlier and I watched some content from Kwame Brown and his rant about Tommy Sotomayor. And let me tell you guys this before I start on this one piece right here. I've not really followed a lot of this young man, but I have been in conversations where we talked about where he was positioning himself in the accountability argument, right? When it came to his view on women and the way that they behave, men and the way that they behave in and out of the basketball industry, but basically generally in society and how they respect and regard relationships when it comes to the Black community. So the reality is this. Right now, as it stands, we have less of a value for ourselves and more of a value for those outside of ourselves when it comes to accountability. You said, so who brought the drugs and guns in our community first? I'm about to show you. So have you ever heard of Johnny Curry? He's a part of your answer. And the thing that I respect the most about Johnny Curry is this. Not his contribution to introducing drugs and weapons into the Black community, but the amount of accountability that he takes. So he did an interview recently with Vlad TV. And one of the things that I absolutely loved about his interview is that at no point did he point fingers outward. And every single time that Vlad went to that false narrative that Black people like to give themselves, he corrected him. Because the reality is this. He knows that he had an agenda. His agenda was to feed his family. And so this is what I say to this, you know. Everybody has their own thing, but whatever your thing is, you got to be able to call a thing if you want to live an autonomized life. We cannot hide behind the rhetoric that the world has created for us that allows us to be and manifest stability and comfortability behind blaming someone else for the atrocities in our community, for the things that we do. And to be honest with you, just because Johnny Curry is one of the first people to bring and introduce drugs and hard drugs, should I say, to the Black community, doesn't mean in any way that he's the only person to have introduced them. But he's definitely one of the only Black men who is more than willing to admit that, hey, this is something that I did, this is how I leveled up, and this is how it benefited me. This is also some of the things, this is also some of the things that I decided to attach myself to. And this is where I went with that. And this is how it impacted not only my family, but also the Black community. People in the Black community have to take accountability for what they do, period. You said, I feel that true family research has died off due to lack of accountability. I totally agree. That structure has been overshadowed by useless entertainment. Look, let me tell you something that resonates on so many different levels, okay? Because I'm going to get to all of that. Because here is the thing, in Johnny Curry's interview, right? The man did such a thorough job, okay, on the accountability index component. Just that by itself, that it's enough to make any Black person restructure the way that they look at the blame that they put on the white community. It's enough to make white people understand in this generation that you are not the problem that we've made you out to be. Whatever their personal values are, hey, tough love, how are you? We have to understand they're entitled to those, just like we maintain our position on ours. I think it's really interesting how his interview went when he responded to the attempts, right? And I love the way that he responded. There is something about this man that resonates in such a way because of the generation that he comes from. We come from a generation of accountability. So it's not looking outward to who did what to us. We're looking as to how it is that we responded to the opportunities that we were presented with. And so here's the thing. Let's just say you're growing up in that era, okay? And drugs were dropped off in your neighborhood out of nowhere. Millions of dollars of drugs just dropped off in your neighborhood. Somebody lost them, okay? Let's say that happened, right? Who decided to pick the drugs up and decide to take the drugs and decided to either distribute them amongst people in the community and charge for it, and or use the drugs and then continue to distribute it amongst people in the community and then go search for other resources to acquire additional drugs? Who made that choice? Because here's the thing about Johnny Curry and his story, you guys. Pay attention. White boy Rick, okay, is the person who was responsible for informing on and infiltrating Johnny Curry's organization, his gang activity, his drug activity, and all of that. However, he came into the picture much later than Johnny Curry. He only came into the picture when Johnny Curry had gotten so big and he made that direct connect in Colombia. Okay. That's when he came into the picture. And even then it took him years to infiltrate to the point where he got the information to be able to take back to the feds and really start to tear this thing down from the inside out. Okay. Johnny Curry was asked, how did he feel about white boy Rick snitching on him? Right? And did he have any hard feelings about it? He answered, no, I don't have any hard feelings because, I knew what I was doing. So I knew what came with that potentially. So I was out there just trying to feed my family, to do what I had to do. He made connections with very highly influential other Black people. I want to make sure that I make that a point of contention here. We had one of the most prominent Black leaders in the history of America. And he made a tie with this man. So that when police officers stopped him, right, Detroit's mayor is in his pocket, essentially, because he has an obligation to his niece to protect her. Protecting her interest to mean that he has to protect the boyfriend / now the husband's interest, right? So he was smart. He was smart and calculating in everything that he did. But here it is, this man who's more than willing and ready to take accountability for his parts in bringing drugs into the Black community, distributing those said drugs, inciting violence in the Black community, division in the Black community. And of course, this thing led to the demise of Black families. Because if the mothers and the fathers are out getting high, who is attending to the children? Right? If what comes with substance use and the culture of substance use is a thing that is now a Black community issue, what happens to the value of the system in and of itself? So essentially, this man only did what he saw fit to do because he saw an opportunity and he went for it. So we as Black people had a choice. We could have bitten off a little piece of that bread and said, okay, well, you know what? Let me get some of that and let me do this. Or we could have continued on our course of reputable interactions with not only our community, but also outside communities, taking responsibility for the position that we already have in our family systems, and then move with a sense of purpose, drive, to continue doing what's morally and ethically sound in our eyes, what we'd already determined. You said, so with your reasoning, all responsibility / accountability is to be blamed on Black men and women. Of course. Both responsibility and accountability. Of course. So we have to be accountable for what we do. Just because, let me tell you something. I have a very renowned public figure / Black icon as an aunt in my family. Okay. And one of the things, even though she made history and she's all in all of you guys' history books and all that great stuff, one of the things that she lived by was that we have to look at the full picture. The day she was made famous, she had no intent on being made famous. No intent whatsoever. She had her position and she held her position. Her holding on to her position and her belief system led to a ripple effect of things that provided an opportunity for Black civil rights leaders to move in a certain way. As a result of that, the Black community iconized her, idolized her, pedestalized her. Not ever going to her for her story, not her point of view of what happened on that day, anything like that. But one thing that she made clear to us is that if the people who were involved in that thing on that day, that event, had not done what they did, she wouldn't have her platform that she had. Nobody would have wrote books about her. Nobody would have said, write a Black History Month article on this woman. Nobody would have done that. Nothing would have gone down in print about her or her life because it would have been insignificant. She would have just been another defiant Black woman, like us all, per Kevin Samuels. So it's 100% about accountability and responsibility. Everything that we do has a response from people around us. Whether or not our response is what matters is dependent on the people who are taking a nice view of that event. And it's based on their perceptions. They can put us on a pillar. They can decide to not. They can look over us. But where we sit in life, where we believe in our position in life, is how we move forward in life. Because that's what guides our purpose. That's what drives us. That's what motivates us. You understand? So if you are a person without your own internal compass and your own internal motivation, you are also a person without personal accountability because that's not been seeded in you. You understand? So everybody is interconnected. We are all systemically connected. Whatever this other person does, yes, it affects me. But it doesn't mean that that person's actions are more important than my actions, because my response to them is going to be based on me, not them. One of the things that's oftentimes mentioned in religion is to turn the other cheek, right? And we look at that at face value. So if a man were to approach you now, a strange person, you never met this person, you're walking out of a restaurant, you got your food in your hand, you're ready to go get in your car, and then that man just approaches you and just slaps the taste out of your mouth, literally, for no reason. You don't know them, they don't know you, but they slapped you. What's your response? What is your response? And once you respond, who's responsible for it? Whose fault is it? In this scenario, do tell. And then I want you guys to go a step further. Who cares about the way you responded? Who's there taking note of how you responded? Who's making you history? Who's making your responses history? How important is that thing to you? You being hit, being assaulted in public, unbeknownst to yourself that this was coming about. So I think that when you ask me about accountability and responsibility of the individuals who are definitely a part of the drug community, it's 100% their responsibility to take. It's 100% their accountability to take for their parts in that. And so with that being said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this interview of Johnny Curry's because I feel like it is so important. Let me see if I can find it. He was quite the handsome fellow, And then a lot of people talk about his wife and, the things that happened to her. He's the perfect example, I think, for the Black community to kind of really take a look at the full picture and look at where we are now with the same things still happening
today.
To
talk about what?
One sec. Same thing still happening today. But the responses that we take today to those same instances, those same things are so different. Like so different to the point that we're violent towards one another and our violence is justified because somebody did us wrong or someone took something from us or somebody decided to sleep with our spouse or somebody decided to sleep with our sister or our brother and they knew that was not something that we would approve of. Let me share my audio really quickly.
What? I mean, what happens happening?
Well,
with Realtor.com's home alerts, we found our new desert home really fast.
And us cacti aren't exactly known for our speed.
Mainly because we don't have what?
Next thing you know, a couple hours later, she went into a coma and she stayed into a coma for about a week. And we was all really praying that she left because after the doctor said that she had bust a blood vessel in her head, that she would be nothing but a vegetable.
Holloway and Maserati Rick. Okay, so as you're growing this business, you start actually supplying some of the other gangs in the area.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I mean, Detroit had an interesting kind of mix of crews. There was Young Boys Incorporated.
Right. They was West, right. Yes.
Mm-hmm. The Pony Down Gang.
They was West.
Best Friends.
They was East.
Chamber Brothers.
They was East.
And then Demetrius Holloway and Maserati Rick.
They were East.
Okay. And I remember I interviewed Jalen Rose, who grew up in Detroit. And he was talking about how he grew up around Young Boys Incorporated.
Right, that was West.
That whole thing. Okay.
Right.
Did you know Jalen Rose at all?
Not really at all. I only knew basically Tommy. He was East. Jalen was West. Tommy was East.
Okay. So you have this operation in Detroit. And you built it up to about 25 houses, but you're mostly doing weed.
Mostly weed. At that time, yes, mostly weed.
Yep. And then you connect with your wife's uncle, Cece.
Oh, you did a little research, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I connected with CC. He was out of New York, matter of fact.
Right. And Cece actually had connections to the Gambino crime family.
Absolutely.
And these guys were pushing heroin.
Definitely.
So now you're getting bricks of heroin.
Yeah, you're right.
So what was it like dealing with the Gambino mafia?
Just like me and you, Cardone, they was regular people. They wasn't hard people to deal with. To sit down and talk, just like we sitting here talking, they wasn't like that, or it wasn't a scary thing or anything like that. It was just normal people.
Okay.
Right.
And you originally started out with 2 bricks of heroin.
Right.
Now, heroin is very different from weed.
Yeah, very different.
Right. I remember like hearing stories from some of my friends about how the big drug dealers would keep a heroin addict with them at all times.
Nothing I have done has been the straight path. When I started my website, I was like, I need a home for all these parts.
Because that heroin addict would do anything in order to get a hit. If he needed to go in and kill the whole building, he would do it.
Ain't too much different than crack. They do that with crack too, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's true.
Right. Well, it's a lot more serious than weed. Basically, people get a lot more addicted. They go through withdrawals, and people will do a lot more for heroin.
Absolutely.
So, and with the heroin comes the violence.
I'd say so, yeah.
Okay. So what changed in your operation when you moved from weed to heroin?
What changed the operation?
Yeah.
It was more money actually in the heroin than it was when weed. Definitely. I really stopped even messing around with weed. My twin brother continued doing the weed, where I actually had met, like you say, my ex-wife's uncle, and I got into the heroin field.
Okay. So now you're in the heroin business.
Absolutely.
And you're making more money. So do the number of houses start to increase?
You didn't need as many houses with heroin as you did with the weed. Because it's like you understand, like I could actually take a key of heroin and you can have actually 20 pounds of weed. I'd make 3 times more than you off the key of heroin than you would off the 20 pounds of weed. So it was triple the money. So you didn't have to have as many houses with weed that you did with heroin. And so.
Okay. Well, and then at one point you end up getting into cocaine.
Yeah, then both of them. I had cocaine, heroin. I had my own outlets and own field. Everything that I did after a while, I had my own outlets and my own fields and my own ways of getting it. Basically, I was my own boss, basically.
But then at one point, the cocaine becomes crack.
Right.
And that seems to change everything.
Changed the whole game.
Okay. So what changed when crack entered the picture?
When crack came in, they was like more or less like this freebase thing. They was putting it down there with this stuff, 151. The liquor was a 151. They would cook it and put it in a pipe and go from there. That's when I was actually really dealing with, I really don't want to say his name, and that's not me really, but we went to him, and actually that's when we started messing actually with a lot of the cocaine, because it was totally, the cocaine now is totally, the way they use cocaine now is totally different back then when they was doing cocaine back then, totally different now. Because they used the one.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. He didn't want to mention his Colombian connect. He didn't want to mention his direct connect to bringing drugs into the Black community in Detroit. But I think that all of you know the history of the American connect for cocaine. And it's going to be mentioned, but he's definitely going to go over it for obvious reasons. And like he said, the only names that Johnny Curry drops during the course of this interview are the names of the people who are already deceased. And he talks about his reason for that as well. But what he does not do at any point in this video, at any point during this interview, is lacked or fail to take accountability for his role and all of his different connects role, and also what was to be expected out of them too, you know. And that's my thing. If we had this same level, and he speaks to that over the course of this interview, if we had that same energy, if we kept that same energy in the way that we regard what has happened to the Black community, we could be in a much different place right now. Race has nothing to do with it. He mentioned that too. He mentions that too. You have a white guy coming into a prominent or predominantly Black community, right? That is prominent for drugs and drug activity, gangs and gang activity. And that person was only protected and only allowed to come into that community because of him. He didn't know that he was being infiltrated at the time. He had no idea. No idea.
151. That's at Don Q 151. That's when it really was popping in. It was really a mess at that time. It just really kind of surfaced a lot.
Well, you're building up this operation, and I guess at one point you're worth about $100 million. Is what they say.
The feds kept pretty much on the accurate right price then, you know, so they know about somewhere 150, 100, 200 million, somewhere up in that area.
Well, I guess there ended up being a drought in terms of your connect to New York.
Right.
So you guys got together and went out to Florida.
I got together. Who was you guys? I don't know where we went, but I got together, went out to Florida.
See?
Okay, you went out to Florida, and then that's where you got a Colombian connection.
Absolutely.
What did you have to go through to get that connection?
Matter of fact, I can mention his name because he's passed now. A guy named Ted. He was a biker, white guy. And actually, he hooked me up with a connection out in Florida, and we went from there. Okay. And then I was also tied into this guy. He's passed too, that I got the Berliner from. He hooked me up with a connection out there too in Florida. That's when I actually took the Corvette. The Berliner was actually a Corvette from the beginning. And we took it out to Pompano Beach. I drove it out there and had the conversion deed out there. And that's when I met another connection out in Florida, because that's when the coke was so tough. You could smell the money. Like you go in a bar and the money smelled like cocaine.
The Colombian Connect.
Yes.
Do you know if it came from Pablo Escobar, one of the other cartels, or you didn't know?
Cartels. I can't say which cartel, but it came from a different cartel.
Okay. Was there ever a point that you wanted to actually fly out to Colombia to actually get a more direct plug, or were you happy with what you had?
Fly out to Colombia and get it more direct.
Yeah? You actually did that?
One time I went that way.
Okay. What was that Colombian trip like?
Actually, when you go out there and get a direct connect, that's anywhere you go, you get a direct connect. You don't have to go through different channels. You're going directly to the man. You don't have to go through this person, that person, or 5 or 6 different people. You're going directly to the man.
Okay. So you met with the head guy over there.
Right.
Okay. And how many kilos were you pushing at that point?
At that time, we might have been pushing 50 kilos.
At a time?
That's a start.
Okay. And, you know, from what I understand, the Colombians, if you end up messing up their money, there's some serious repercussions with that.
You know that.
Was there situations where people messed up the Colombians' money?
It was always strictly business. I kept it business, personal. Sometimes you would actually go to them. If you keep business, straight business, it's a lot different. And you could be actually broke and meet a connect. And as long as they trust you and their money is good, you give it to them, they give you the money. You could be broke and go to them, they give you 50, 100 keys, and you take a downfall and they put up and give you 100 keys and put you right back there.
Well, when you're pushing that much weight, I mean, you have the police that are, busting it. There's robberies, there's kick doors, there's ripoffs and so forth. So during that time, were you having problems with shipments getting lost or skimmed or anything?
No, I never had a shipment or nobody kicking in doors or nobody even robbing me.
Okay.
It wasn't as violent back then as it is now.
Aha.
See,
Why is that?
I guess back then, everybody respected everybody. The younger crowd started kind of messing that up. The older crowd respected. If you was next door selling coke or heroin, that's your business. So, but nowadays, I can't really speak on the younger guys, but they don't want to see nobody next door dealing next to them or this and that. But back then, everybody respected everybody. We put it like that. Everybody respected everybody. You was doing your thing. Everybody was getting money. That's the key. Everybody getting $1. So that's all that mattered. I don't care what the next man make. As long as I made mine and fed my family, that's all that mattered.
Okay, so hearing that from a person who is known to be the largest drug kingpin in the Black community and one of the first actually to do what he did, I want to hear how many of you still have that same energy about some white man dumping drugs into your Black community, and then as a result, the Black community declining in value and worth. So that's the first question when it comes to accountability. And you're hearing it directly from the horse's mouth. Directly, not secondhand, not from just me, not from allegations, but directly from his mouth. He decided that he wanted to level up when he wanted to level up, and he needed to level up due to a drought, due to his not being able to bring in the money that he needed at the time. He decided that, okay, well, hey, let me get with this biker. He's going to hook me up with somebody in Florida. Somebody in Florida hooks me up with a direct connect to somebody in Colombia. That's what he decided. And he is man enough, still living to this day, served his time also. God, you gotta love it. Gotta love it. And I really like the part. So I really want you guys to go listen to this interview. But what the real thing for me that I love about this guy is, despite his criminal activity, despite his criminal past, right? He doesn't hold anybody accountable for his part. Not only in bringing drugs to the community, right? But also in his going to jail as a result of what he did, his being arrested. There is a different level of respect that we have for ourselves as people now in America. We're just a different type of people. We're not the same. Hey, what's going on, Money Boy Trey? So it's us. We are the problem. It's not drugs in the community, because you have a choice whether or not you use the drugs. Like he said, the person next door selling heroin, crack, weed, whatever they doing, that's their business. Mind the business that minds you. What I don't understand is why it is that we're such a community now that there is zero respect for one another. So we can go to and we can call Johnny Curry lots of things because he bought drugs into the Black community, and he is unapologetic for it. Okay. Unapologetic, made 200 mil, real cool. Okay. We could call him a lot of names. We could blame him. He is the reason for the divide, for the demise of the Black community. We could do that. Or we could take accountability for our part in either ignoring the fact that our children are becoming dope heads, weed heads, crack heads, whatever it is that you guys want to call them, depending on the drug of choice. We can take accountability for our lack of knowledge, our lack of insight, our lack of action. We could do that. Because let me tell you something, what happens when we do that, right? It's not the internalizing of the blame, because that's not a part of accountability. But our actions on the outside, once we can see a thing and call a thing for ourselves, that positions us in a completely different place in life. And so when we can devise a plan of action in order for us to mitigate these types of factors from continuing to perpetuate the cycle of ignorance in our community, perpetuating the cycle of a lack of accountability, a lack of responsibility, lawlessness, lawless behavior that is meant to be unchecked, unaccounted for, right? When we can position ourselves to come up with a true solution to the divide between the police authority and our Black community as a result of our Black community not only disrespecting ourselves, but also disrespecting the people who are charged with keeping the peace and keeping us grounded as people who are United States citizens, not far removed from being citizens because we're Black, but United States citizens because we're inclusive and we are part of the faction. And even though our subculture of Black America is a real one, right? We are accountable enough and we have enough self-respect to have a high regard for those people in authority. As a result, when they approach us, we don't present with the hostility that our anxiety is rooted in the vicarious traumas of our past, right? We don't have that. We don't have that. So it's not there. So we don't expect for them to disrespect us. We don't expect for them to take us at, and over police us. We don't expect for them to abuse us or overstep their powers because we know that they respect and have a high regard for their jobs that they are paid to do. One of the things, that Johnny Curry mentions, he's very specific about that race has nothing to do with nothing. He was stopped by white cops and Black cops alike. But once they knew of his affiliation, once they knew who his mother-in-law was, they continued to allow this person that's breaking the law to continue his course without action. So it boils down to the politicism of racism. Racism is a way for politics to accomplish an end goal in America today. That's what it is. So I say in Washington, it's not that Washington thinks that the Black people need specific laws or specific holidays to honor themselves, and Black people need all of this thing in order for them to be a higher functioning people. Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, capitalized on the insecurities in the Black community, capitalized on the unrealistic expectations of the Black community. You'd advocate for a holiday, a national holiday to celebrate Juneteenth. Like you don't already know that there is an entire month dedicated to Black history, Black American history, where Juneteenth is definitely a part of Black American history. So if your kids were not learning it, it's essentially the education system that you should have been advocating for change in, instead of asking for a national holiday that still nobody is going to care about. The rest of America will not take notice of your holiday. That's just giving you an extra day to elect to be off work, essentially. So it means nothing to these people that you are entrusting to make these changes. When the Black community realizes that and then takes their own fight to the right people for the right level of change by going into these communities and reinstating purpose, passion, value in our young people, when we start doing that, when we start doing the work as a result of us taking accountability for where we are right now as Black American people, that's when change will matter. I hear people ask all the time about Black Lives Matter, and I'm going to talk a bit about Kevin Samuels and his plight before I get off of here, because I do have some other things to do, some sessions and stuff to finish up for the day. But this is the thing that stands out for me. Kevin Samuels made it very clear, right, that everyone is out here to make money. Kevin Samuels was asked about his beef with, what's his name? Umar Johnson, right? Y'all gonna really have to take a seat for this one. He was asked about his beef with Umar Johnson, and he said, you know what, really, we share a lot of symmetry, basically. Like, we agree on most things. I mean, there are a couple of things we disagree on, but we agree on most things. What does that tell you? he mentioned something that was so impactful. And I think for everybody that watches Life Discussion with Dr. Jefferson, that listens to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson, can go out and you guys, you can cash a check with this statement. I do not like Kevin Samuels. Period. Nothing about the guy resonates with me. But when I say I call a spade, and I give validity to the things that people say, because everybody has something of value to add to the conversation. Everybody has a valuable contribution, whether I like them or not. Kevin Samuels is one of those people. This man should be making you guys realize y'all are so much riding his curtail right now, especially Black people, Black men, because he talks about the fact that the vast majority of his show is funded by the Black man. So that's the reason that he's doing what he's doing, because he's out here to make this money. So he can capitalize on your trauma and your experiences with Black women that left you feeling a certain way, that left you feeling less than respected, that left you feeling less than empowered, that left you feeling bad on the inside. And as a result, emotionally responsive to the Black women in the Black community that you come from. You came from a Black womb, right? So let me capitalize off of that. And let me now go out and demean these Black women so that I can now form, I don't know, a tribe of interaction so we can all celebrate together. What's wrong with y'all? Umar Johnson does the exact same thing. Kevin Samuels recognized that for what that was. When Umar Johnson said that, he was creating a diagnosis for these young women who are raped, who are victimized by family members, sodomized. When he said that this was thottish personality disorder, he was talking about your Black woman. And Kevin Samuels talks about your Black woman in her sexual interactional patterns, that y'all are talking about the same thing. The same thing is bothering you. But what that really says is that there is a deep level of insecurity in the Black man that says that he needs to ridicule the sexual promiscuity that is happening in these women. He needs to directly target those things in order for him to feel better about his sense of self. But let me be the person, the first one, to plant this seed. If there is something wrong with the Black woman and her sexual patterns of interaction, please understand, my young kings, that means there is something wrong with you. Because nobody is out here having sex with these young Black women but you. Nobody is out here raping these young Black women but you. It's you. It's a collective you. So when you say and when you demeaning, when you move to disposition or depedestalize your Black woman, what does that say about you? I totally agree, Rainbow Rev. Totally agree. So what I want Black people to take from this particular segment on accountability is just simply this, just nothing else, just this one thing. Wherever you are seated in your perceptions around what has shaped the atrocities and what we now see and call and refer to the Black experience, being Black in America, Black Americanism, Afro-Americanism. Wherever you are seated, whatever you figure has caused the issue, what is your resolution? How will you bridge the gap between the perceptions of young Black men when it comes to them interacting with the police officers as a result of their lawlessness, as a result of their criminal behavior? How will you rectify the perceptions of young women in the Black community when it comes to their hypersexuality, when it comes to their inaccurate or inadequate response systems to violent situations, to molestation, to sexual assault, right? What is your solutions for these issues that are obviously a prominent part of being American and being Black? What is your solution for the overuse and abundance of illicit substance in Black America? by the way, that contributes to the altered mind states that typically, of course, contribute directly to the amount of hostility that they have amongst and within each other, right? And so you had everything that you needed in this interview. So I'm going to need you guys to take some time out and go and look at this Johnny Curry interview conducted by Vlad TV. Shout out to that guy who is a non-Black man, by the way, a non-Black man, for bringing these very Black relevant issues to surface. Not only is he bringing this one, but he's also bringing Kevin Samuels. And the interesting thing that you guys don't realize that this man is on, he is on a mission. Vlad TV has done more for the actualization of the Black community just in this last year than any Black leader. He's put more content out on his platform because of the reach of his platform than any Black leader. The issues in the Black community is the Black community. It's not a white man. There's no white man about to start no war amongst Black people. The race war is your race war. It's an inter-race war. You have Black men arguing with each other on social media for the entertainment of other Black people. And you have lots of Black people supporting, following, viewing this content because that is what entertains us. That is what entertains us. You have a Black man on a public platform that is aired out and children are listening to it on the Breakfast Club. And this man is an entire sex offender of underage girls. Admittedly. But you guys want to crucify R. Kelly for a different time and space, a different society with a different level of rules and societal norms. Help me understand. Y'all, you got to make this stuff make sense for me, people. Help me understand. I hear that when he was interviewing Umar, there were some inconsistencies, and he mentions that actually in his interview with Kevin Samuels, Rev. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. I haven't had a chance to go and check out the actual interview that he did with Umar, however, so I'm going to do that as soon as I get a moment. A break in my day. But what I do encourage you guys to do is to go and start looking at some of this content and go and start taking your own perceptions of what your history is, what it entails, and what greatness lies there and what inadequacies lies there, and then figure out what are the most viable solutions for the here and now as we redact and reform the Black community and the Black experience. Figure out the best way for us to position ourselves in inclusivity, not exclusion, not find, Black spaces where we can only exist because we need Black safe spaces, but to be an inclusive part of the overall whole where we can all grow, where we can all get money. If you guys don't take anything else from Johnny Curry's interview, take the one thing he said about the way that young people are responding now that are selling drugs on the street. But I want you to apply that mindset to the Black condition and Black people in general today. Okay? I want you to take that and I want you to ask yourself when and where and why did we lose our respect that grounded and seated the way that we move in the Black community? Why did we remove our respect principles? Why? You got so many Black women out here that's a part of this Gen Z mess talking about, well, I'm going to wear my bonnet wherever I want to. I'm going to be on a Zoom meeting for work and I'm going to show up with my bonnet. If what her name, Denia Jackson did it, then I can too. The girl had on a beret for one. And it's embarrassing that we don't have the level of intelligence that will let us know what type of head wraps are acceptable outside of your house and what types are not. A beret is worn by us in the military as a head cover that's acceptable for us to be in uniform and recognize the importance to cover that which is not covered with the helmet at the time because you're not in combat. It's a dress down uniform. I agree. I figure that if people traveled more, I figure if people traveled outside of America, and I've spoke to that several times, Mr. Brooks, I figure if people went to African countries, they would have a different energy. Because the one thing that is interesting to me when that last argument I made about the head wraps and things like that, I talked about Tasha K misspeaking, talking about, oh well, we're descendants of Africa, so that's the way we represent ourselves. We come from kings and queens, and we can wear bonnets. That doesn't mean that we don't value ourselves, we don't respect ourselves. And then there was an African woman to come on there and say, no, what I'm gonna do right now is make some corrections. There are headscarves that are complementary to our presentation of our entire outfit. And that's what we wear. And it's a fashion statement. It's meant to go be in congruence with the outfit. So my bonnet, however, is worn in my bedroom. Don't leave my bedroom. Don't leave my house. When are these young Black people, when are they going to find the right person to go after and decide to model behavior after? Because right now, if we look at what entertains us, if we look at the number of people that are exposed to and view this type of content right here, instead of the type of content that seeds more violence, irrational thoughts, irrational behaviors, let's see how many views BET got on this new Cardi B thing that they're doing. Is it BET or MTV? Both of them are smart enough to capitalize on the inadequacies of us in the Black community, though. I had to read the blog I did on Umar Johnson. Thanks. Can you share a link to the article here so that not only myself but other people can view it? And also to my email address, doclqj@gmail, Black Anonymous. So I think we need to separate in order to come together later. I agree with that. So there were some things, some sentiments, and some areas that Umar Johnson started to go down. And if he wasn't so extreme, you could almost relate, right? But I'm going to point that out in my full-on interview on Umar and his sentiments and things like that, and bringing him back in and getting the help that he needs. But there are some sentiments that he points out when he says that some of our young Black men, some of these young boys are out there and they're too far gone, right? And then he goes on and starts to rant and talk about we need to put these people to sleep for good. I don't ever think that anybody is so far to the point that they can never be reached at all. I think that sometimes we have to meet people where they are and bring them back in. You know, it's about reeling them back in. It's about doing our part. It's about sharing in their experience and giving them the respect to just listen to them, to understand where they're coming from and what led to them being there. Now, do I approve of Johnny Curry and his drug activity and his lifestyle? Let me live vicariously through that guy, right? No, I don't. I don't believe and don't approve of anything unless it was done the way it was done with him. Because if you guys go and you watch, right, you go and you sit with Johnny Curry's interview, he's also going to talk about a time where he was arrested and he didn't do the thing, right? He was being accused of something else. And that leads me to helping people understand how sometimes we are over-policed, as we call it, but targeted in the Black community. The reason is sometimes they don't have enough evidence to make what needs to stick, but we know damn well we've done something. So we've got to be more honest. We've got to be more transparent. We've got to be more abruptly honest with ourselves and say, okay, well, I know that I've done something. Might not be the thing that I'm being arrested for, but I'm sure they're on to me. Okay. There are lots of serial killers, and I talk about that, all the time. It's a lot of serial killers out here and pedophiles that have not been arrested yet. Yeah, literally. And we got one that's out on, he's not even on bond. He's just scot free now. That one guy that killed those people in Canada and the one that killed them on the bus. What's his name? Something Lee. Yeah, Vince Lee. And he's out. He's amongst us all. What are we talking about? He murdered a man, stabbed him, cut his head off, ate his heart out in front of other people. And he's now free, walking amongst us all. At least he went to jail and did his time, or should I say, psychiatric facility and did his time, because he ain't go to jail. No, he didn't. But they released him of his own recognizance. Doesn't have to take medication or anything like that. So I think that these are things that we need to recognize. We need to recognize that there are a lot of people that are just like him in our society, doing substances, illicit substances, and they feel like these illicit substances do not alter their minds. For whatever reason, they feel like these substances do not lead to them becoming more violent. You just heard the kingpin drug dealer himself tell us it makes us aggressive. He said it. I don't know what it takes for you folks to wake up. I hear a lot of people out here in the Black community calling themselves woke, but I just don't see it. You must be lucid dreaming. I got it. Makes sense now. At any rate, go back, watch this video from the very beginning if you came in on the end of it, and give me your answer as to what is preventing Black people from making strides today. Give me your answers to the many questions that I ask about over the course of this video. Give me your answers. Give me your feedback. Tell me what you see is the main issue, the prominent issue in the Black community. Tell me what you think about the video snippet that I played. And, let's get ourselves together, folks. I will include a link to the video that I allowed you guys to view over the course of this, so you can go back and look at the entirety of it, because it is a pretty lengthy video. It's over an hour long, but let me tell you, that is some good stuff. They're not even in REM sleep, because in REM sleep, at least your cognitive faculties, and your hippocampus are doing the processes that are necessary in order for you to maintain stability and forward, prominent messages from your experiences in your day to your frontal lobe of your brain for permanent storing. But no, not even. Hey, Casey, how are you? So I appreciate you guys for watching. Don't forget to share this content and let me know what your answers are. So that's all I got. I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, thank you guys for helping me reach beyond my goal now. So share more and let's see if we can hit that 500 goal by July. It's only a couple of days left in the month, you guys. Do a big push. Share this content. All right, later days.
Alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
So I put the link down there, you guys. There it is. Go ahead, click it, and watch the full skit that I showed to you guys today. That's it. That's all I got. Take care.